Williams, who everybody knows who he is. And Ev, so the CEO search for Twitter, how far along is it, and is it still open to some of us in this room if we want to raise our hand?
We're happy to have you apply.
Oh, good.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you looking for?
We're looking for an exceptional leader who knows how to define a direction and a vision and make things happen.
What about, I mean, do you need a product person more than a revenue person?
I don't think product is necessarily the right way to say it. I think they have to see the potential of the platform and know how to choose the direction. And
so a strategic vision for what?
Yeah, it's more. I would say it's more strategy than it is product per se. There's lots of amazing product people in Twitter, and the potential of Twitter is so vast and always has been. I think the real challenge is deciding what to focus on and aligning the entire organization toward that purpose. And so that's the job. And with 4,000 people, that's the job of a true leader who knows both the strategic and vision components as well as the day-to-day operations piece.
So how far along actually is the search?
We're a month or so, however long the announcement was, is when we've been doing the search. And we're can't say too much about it, but we're doing a search.
Why
Which has been a question.
Why did you feel there was? Why did all of you feel there was a need for a change in leadership?
That was really, as reported, driven by Dick. I mean, we were optimistic about where we were going. There's a lot of great stuff in the works, and Dick decided, now's the time to step down for his personal choices, as well as he said, he had really built the team to a point where if that was going to happen, sometime it seemed like the best time to do it.
If and when you do get a new CEO, that CEO may be facing 3 or 4 former founders, CEOs, all on the board with it. How hard will that be, or are you going to have some structure to give some guys some freedom, a woman some freedom?
Well, I think the board composition won't be a deciding factor in the choice. I mean, if we need to, if I will say personally, if the right CEO would prefer one less CEO on the board, I'd be happy to. It's more important that we get that person than I'm on the board. I can only speak for myself.
Mm-hmm. What do you see as a strategic vision for Twitter? I mean, I don't quite know where it's going.
Well, it's not necessarily my place to define that, but I think Twitter primarily as a news system. And from early on, we didn't necessarily know what it was. We thought it was a social network. Microblogging was a thing a lot of people called it. And in around 2009, we made the distinction internally, and then the way we started talking about it, that rather than a social network, it was a real-time information network. I think the real value of Twitter that we've seen over the last 6 years since then has been applications of that. And there's a personal component to that, and there's very public components to that. And so if you really think of news, what is news, then Twitter excels at that. There's nothing else that is.
Yes and no. I mean, I got up this morning, and being the type of geek I am, I was deeply interested in the Iran nuclear deal that just got announced. I went to Twitter. Mm-hmm. It didn't satisfy me. I thought, why don't people build apps on top of Twitter that will make this better?
Or why doesn't Twitter build that? So the thing that Twitter has is the guarantee they have all the information you're looking for. And so a big topic conversation and things that I think is public that we're building into Twitter is better ways to organize that information. Mm-hmm. And because it's there, it's absolutely there. Whether it's the first-hand reports from the ground of what's going on, to rumors, to the links to the stories as soon as they're published, and the best stories no matter where they are, all that is there, and you can find it. Granted, it is often hard to find exactly what you're looking for. So I totally agree. That could be way better, and that just speaks to the potential yet to be realized there, because both the infrastructure and the data is available, and it's not an easy task to make that all easier to use, but that speaks to the direction or the potential that it still has.
You corrected me a moment ago when I said third parties should be building apps that would make it so that if I say I need Iran nuclear deal stuff, somebody would have an app I would go to that would do Twitter for me in a certain way. And you said, well, we could build that ourselves at Twitter. I remember when Steve Jobs was saying that about not allowing third-party apps on the iPhone, and finally he realized, no, I should open up to third-party apps, and the world changed. Do you see Twitter ever becoming a platform for other people building apps upon it?
Yes, and it's you know, it has a long history of having. We had an API really early, and we did not really have a platform, and a lot of people conflated those things, and a lot of people built apps for Twitter, or clients for Twitter, or things that were ostensibly on top of Twitter. But it wasn't a well-designed platform, and it didn't actually create a win for developers and users and the company, which is what a platform has to do to thrive. And so it was one of our strategic errors, actually, that we had to wind down over time. And the company got a lot of critiques for that, but it was largely a myth that the API drove. There's a storyline about Twitter that these third-party developers and apps drove all this growth and innovation for Twitter, which personally I think is completely overblown.
Yeah, but when I first came to Twitter, it was a long time ago, and believe it or not, I came in because I was playing a game, a massive game called Echo Bazaar, I think it was,
Okay.
in which you played the game, and when you found a knife in the basement of the castle,
Wow.
It automatically tweeted it out, which was embarrassing when then I became, and had my own Twitter feed, and people would say, you found a knife in the basement, but all because you can't. But it was a game platform at first, and now it's not. Do you think a new CEO is going to have some vision about how we take it into gaming, take it into other things?
So Twitter is and should be more of a platform than it is. And there's all kinds of great things that can be built on top of Twitter. In that case, it's really plugged into Twitter. It's not that's not a platform in the way that the iPhone is a platform. And those uses are great, and there's myriad uses, and they add value in lots of ways. The historical Twitter platform, which was a lot of people building client apps that ostensibly offered new ways to interact with Twitter, was in many ways there were great things built, including Twitter's own iPhone client, which we then bought. And but it didn't work, as I said, it wasn't a win-win for users and developers and the company. And so that doesn't mean there's not a way to make it so. In fact, we've talked about there's a whole developer part of Twitter called Fabric that has an amazing mobile development platform that is not necessarily in Twitter, the product, but is part of Twitter, the company.
When you look at a new management team that might be coming in, and you say to them, I'm going to give you one of two emphases. The emphasis could be create amazing new things that Twitter will do that we've hardly thought of. And the other option, plan B, would be create a great revenue stream, because we really haven't figured out the revenue stream as well. Which is more important to you?
Well, Twitter's revenue is pretty good.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say we haven't figured that out. And so, but any company, any technology company has to do both. They have to innovate. We're a public company. We have to keep the revenue building. But the business is really solid. And as I said before, there's so much potential yet with the product. And obviously, there's other new products we could develop. So it's going to be all the above. And there's a lot of that stuff already going on, to be clear. I mean, there's going to be major new components of the product. There's going to be new products. There's going to be new source of revenue.
With that, I know you can't pre-announce, but give us the general ball.
I've already said too much.
No, you haven't. I'll be the judge of that. Go ahead.
When are we going to talk about the company actually?
Okay, so you start with Blogger, which is a way to just make it easy for everybody to be part of the community. You move on to Twitter. The next thing you've done is Medium. Explain that trajectory and why you did Medium.
So I started Medium a couple years ago, 3 years ago now, because I just felt like there was so much left to do when it comes to helping people share important ideas on the internet, which is basically why I got excited about the internet 20 years ago. And I was very excited and very utopian-minded, as a lot of us were in the early 90s, that the internet was going to change everything and make us all smarter as individuals and as a society, because the truth would be out there and we could get instant access to it and we could even have our own voices be heard. And blogs were really a way to realize that idea, and we figured that out a few years in, we being kind of the web community. And that enabled many, many people to publish on a regular basis, and became the format, of course, became the native web publishing format. And then social media really dropped the barrier way lower for many more people to speak. But then when I looked at the world in 2011, after I stepped away from Twitter, I thought, well, it's great. We can check the box on people getting their thoughts out there. I mean, I think there's more people still need to be connected to the internet, but for those who are, it's easy to get your thoughts out there. And that has a lot of value, but just lowering the cost and increasing the speed of information distribution didn't necessarily make us all smarter about everything. And it just seemed like the internet can do more than for media and ideas and knowledge than create a lot more of it. And so I saw the opportunity and the need really to now work on the next level, move up the stack and say, okay, now it's easy to put stuff out there. How do we help people create better things together than they can on their own? How do we help people pay attention to things that really matter to them and that have a lot of value rather than just what's popular or what's new? And how do we really harness the collective intelligence of the internet? Now that we have everybody wired up to this system, how come when I read something, we haven't really evolved that far past the print publishing model? If I read something that you've read and you have thoughts about that thing, it's very unlikely I'm going to get the benefit of your thoughts about that thing. Maybe if I follow a link from social media, you have a little comment, but there's so much more that's possible. And so
you don't see it just as a publishing medium. I mean, I used it at one point as a collaborative medium when I was writing chapters of a book, and other people would say, no, here's what you have to do. It became almost a tool of collaboration.
Exactly, and that's been a theme that we've been thinking about since the beginning, because the internet has been historically great at helping people create things together that are bigger than they can do on their own. If you look at open source software or Wikipedia, in media, any content that's bigger than an Instagram photo or a tweet could benefit from multiple points of view, multiple different types of skills, whether it's copy editing or illustration or all the skills that exist in a media organization. You should be able to tap into those things even if you're an individual. And so we saw that as one of the cool things we could do with Medium. And so collaboration, the way you did it, just putting things up there and getting other people to input on them before you publish your book was a great example of that. And but we're building those tools more natively into Medium, and also not just pre-published. So if you go and read a Medium story and you're logged in and you're following other people on Medium, you can see highlights. So rather than just saying, so if I'm reading a story and you've highlighted something that has your name beside it, and because I follow you, I say, Walter, basically it's like reading a book that you've marked up is much more valuable to me than reading a book that is just new. And so that's tapping into the power of the network as we see it.
I'll just give my one favorite example. When I put one of my chapters up on Medium of the Innovators, I got by a factor of 10 the amount of acid that Stuart Brand had dropped at the Whole Earth Catalog closing party. I got it off by a factor of 10. And a lot of people, including Stuart Brand, corrected me.
Very important.
You have a lot of people who drop acid and use Medium. It's a Venn diagram you didn't know about. So one of the themes of what you've been talking about just now is not the potential of the internet, but sort of the untapped potential. The internet's not quite as good as it could have been. Where does it disappoint you?
It's what gets attention and how value is measured disappoints me. I wrote a piece a while back after actually Aaron Griffith interviewed me for a Fortune piece in which I accidentally said I don't give a shit about Instagram. What I meant was, I think we should be more sophisticated about how we measure value of internet properties and businesses, because basically the only metric that we talk about on the consumer side is number of users who have touched the service over X period of time, usually a month. And that just seems like a silly way if you're going to pick the only way you measure value, it's completely one-dimensional. So there's no distinction between, even on the web, publishing on the web historically, there's no distinction between a 1-second visit and a 10-minute read. And
well, one way to make that distinction would be to have money going to the person creating the content, because that would then enable valued content. Do you think we need to get to that?
I think that would totally make sense, and that happens on the internet. It should happen a lot more easily and a lot more. I don't think it makes sense for a lot of content. I don't think most people who write on the internet are not writing for money. They're writing for a combination of personal expression, personal recognition, and really influence and to change people's minds.
But by the way, let me knock that, which is it shows.
Sure. I mean,
that's one reason the internet sucks.
It's.
I don't mean it really does, but that's a portion of the internet that is where people are only doing it because they want to spout off as opposed to create something of enduring value.
I disagree. I think the vast majority of people, I think that may be true in like blog comments or forums or some places, but there's incredible amounts of knowledge and insight on the internet, and even more in people's heads who don't consider themselves writers or journalists or content creators. And this is really what our mission is to tap. So certainly some content and some professional writers and journalists should be paid directly for that work, and that's needed and super valuable for individuals and society. There's also this whole other largely untapped sources of wisdom and value and insight. And one of our mantras at Medium is great ideas can come from anywhere, and unique and valuable perspectives can come from anywhere. So, for example, we did an initiative around the on-demand economy and another one around women in technology. And what's cool about having all this stuff published in one place and linked together is you can get a reported story from a journalist, and you can get an expert who's on a company, and you can get a story from an Uber driver who also drives for Lyft, and comparing the two cultures and companies. And you can understand that much more deeply than you can just from one perspective of a reported story.
And let me walk back my comment that some of the internet sucks, because that is true. It's the amazing thing. My last question, because I want to open it up. You talked about, I think you call it world positive, things you're looking for. What you just described is world positive. Are you going to be investing in things, and how does that work?
Yeah, so the world positive investing is something my partner James Joaquin came up with as a way to describe how we invest in my side company, not Medium, Obvious Ventures, which is a venture firm I started just this year, sometime recently.
Last year, but who's counting?
And yeah, so World Positive is simply a filter by which we look at investment opportunities. So we're not a social impact fund, but we believe there's incredible amounts of important innovations that are going to be highly profitable to invest in, and there's no point in investing in those that we can't at least believe ourselves are going to do some good for people. So that's how we approach our investing. And
so it's everything from sustainability to a social media that can empower people who've been less empowered.
Yeah, and it's in my view, my whole point of investing is to make more good things happen in the world. So it's fairly easy to look at something. Most technology, I think, is neutral, and it's powerful, and it's tools. If you give good tools to good people, good things happen. But you can rule out a lot of things if you have to actually say, well, I have to believe this at scale. Even if I weren't investing in this, it would do good. I would like to see this succeed even if I weren't investing. And can we add some value to make it more likely to succeed? So that's how we approach it.
Right there.
Hi, Erin Griffith from Fortune. So while you're on stage, there is a story that just came out that is fake, it turns out, on Bloomberg, or a news site that is made to look like Bloomberg, that Twitter has received a $31 billion offer from an unnamed suitor. So the story's fake, but I want to ask you anyways, because everyone's talking about it on Twitter. Given the pressures that Twitter has faced as a public company, do you think the company would be better off under the umbrella of a larger company or as a private company?
No, not at this time. There's probably all kinds of legal things I have to know in order to answer that question properly. So I'm just gonna say that, as I said before, there's incredible potential in Twitter, and blah blah blah. The board will do what it's supposed to do.
Michael.
Evan, from your Pyra days, etc., you've talked about self-expression, and you talked about one of the things for Twitter is that it needs to become more of a platform. When I look at what you've done and when you look at Medium, you seem to be biased more on the self-expression side of a platform rather than helping developers add value to the platform. How do you strike that balance when you think through on your investment side, your Twitter side, and indeed the whole arc of the way you've involved in this medium?
Well, I've thought deeply for a long time about platform from a developer sense, and in fact, Blogger we were building Pyra as a platform. It's good. No one knows about that. Pyra was a product we were building, and I was very excited about web applications as platforms. In 1999, we built Blogger as a tool on top of Pyra, and then with Twitter, as we talked about, we were working on platform strategy. With Medium, we look at it as primarily a content platform. And a lot of the same principles apply, I think, which is getting people to invest on your platform in a way that creates value for all sides. And so for both Twitter and Medium, I still think there's a huge, and Twitter is obviously a content platform as well. And for both Twitter and potentially Medium, at some point, there is a way to turn it into a developer platform. I would be very excited to do that. I have ideas about how to do that. It's probably a matter of sequencing and keeping things simple for now.
Yes.
Yeah, as a public board member, you have the blah, blah, blah when it comes to acquisition. So let me ask you about Medium, which is still private. Does Medium make sense as an independent, long-term, does it make sense as an independent organization or as part of a larger media organization?
I think it can be a huge business on its own. I mean, if you consider the total amount of content, even if we just focus on written ideas and stories, at scale, it's easy to monetize that, just like a lot of these other platforms. Any content platform at scale, it's fairly easy to monetize, whether it's advertising or I'm also interested in direct paid content. And so I think that's a large and interesting business, and I'm certainly not looking to have any conversation about making it part of something bigger anytime soon. I think we're just getting started.
You know, I want to thank you because every arc of your career, besides being world positive, has been about one thing, which is opening up the potential of communicating to people who haven't had that opportunity. I grew up in a world where I got to join a magazine and a newspaper, but when it was Blogger, you brought a whole new set of people in. Twitter brings a whole new set. And I'm a huge fan of Medium because I think it will be the new collaborative tool that allows, as Wikipedia does or GNU Linux does, just ordinary people to collaborate and publish. So thank you, Evan Williams.
Walter.